Do you struggle with finding out what your iPad is good for? Do you often find yourself reaching for your phone or your laptop instead of your iPad? Do you wish that you utilized the potential of your iPad? If any of these resonate with you and you feel like you don't use your iPad as much as you'd like, then this video is for you. Hello and welcome to our corner of the internet. My name is Maraghost, and today we're going to be going over 5 tips to help you get the most out of your iPad. Alright, so tip number 1 is going to be to not try to replace your computer with your iPad yet. Now, if in the future you like your iPad enough to actually replace it with your computer, great, but we're going to start small here. Although iPad OS has made significant improvements, it's still not a desktop class operating system. So there are a few limitations of the iPad platform, right? So one of them is going to be that there are not too many apps that you fully utilize the power of the iPad. I mean, this is especially true for the M1 iPads that have that insane chip. There are also certain apps that are not desktop grade, like for example, Microsoft Office isn't totally fully featured as like the desktop version, and even things like Photoshop for iPad aren't as great as their desktop counterparts. You also have things like poor external monitor support, which may really hinder your workflow. I think one of the things that might be important to mention is that certain things may just be harder with your iPad. You know, I feel like a lot of people were confused by Apple's marketing material where they said like, your next computer isn't a computer or something like that. And I feel like a lot of people might have gotten the incorrect message in that like the iPad is a laptop replacement. And really, I think the iPad is its own thing. So don't try to replace your laptop with your iPad just yet. But the next tip here is going to be to play to the strengths of the tablet interface. So despite the limitations of the iPad, there are a lot of strengths. So I mean, you've got the Apple Pencil, which is one of the best styluses out there. You've got like insane power for the size of the iPad. I mean, like, especially this is the 2018 iPad, which still runs amazing, but with the M1 iPads, they're insane when it comes to the hardware. You've got portability. I mean, like, this thing will fit in almost any bag. And then you've also got the abundance of apps on the App Store. Another thing to keep in mind is that the touch-based interface of the iPad allows for innovation with traditional workflows. Think like 3D modeling, photo editing, video editing, presentations, and digital note-taking. All of these things can utilize the touch-based interface of the iPad and utilize the Apple Pencil in order to facilitate your workflow. It just depends on how good the app actually is. Which leads me to my next point, which is to use software that fully utilizes the iPad's potential. So as I mentioned earlier, there may not be a ton of apps that fully utilize the hardware of the iPad, but there are a few standouts. So you have things like 3D modeling, and I'm not experienced with 3D modeling at all, but you have things like Shaper 3D. If we're talking about more creative work, you've got LumaFusion and you've got Affinity Photo. You've also got like Adobe Lightroom. You've got Photoshop. And then you have miscellaneous things. Like one of my favorite apps for the iPad is an app called Muse, and that's like a spatial canvas app that kind of allows you to make mood boards and vision boards and stuff like that. That's a really great app. You've got like MindNode, which is for mind mapping. Heck, even Notion, which is what I'm using to read my notes right now, is good on the iPad as well. I'm sure there are a lot more, especially industry-specific apps, but the point here is to use the software that will fully utilize the iPad's potential, not from just a hardware standpoint, like if we're talking about the chip, but if we're also talking about the form factor and if we're talking about the software as well. Real quick guys, if you are enjoying this video, then please give it a like. It helps out the channel a ton, and if you're really loving it, then maybe consider subscribing. Alright, so next up here is going to be to learn the features of iPad OS. So by learning the features of iPad OS and how to interact with the platform, it can really facilitate your workflow. I mean, like, imagine using a Windows computer and not knowing like keyboard shortcuts. Those things can really speed up your processes. So there are a few features that are going to elevate your iPad experience, right? So one of them is going to be multitasking, and you can achieve multitasking by clicking on the 3 dots at the top of an app, and then you can just select different apps so you can use them at the same time. You also have quick notes, which can be done by swiping up from the bottom right corner of the screen with the Apple Pencil. You can also take a quick screenshot on the iPad and mark it up by just swiping up from the bottom left corner. And then you can mark up your document or whatever screenshot you just took. You've also got widgets that you can put on your home screen to display really valuable information at a glance. These are just a few features that can speed up your workflows in iPad OS, and I'm sure that there are a ton more, but these are just a few examples. All right, so our last tip here is going to be to designate specific tasks to your iPad. So for this, what I would do is I would just mentally take note of which tasks that you want to use your iPad for. Some examples would be checking your calendar or writing notes, whether they're with the Apple Pencil or with the Magic Keyboard, photo editing, or using your iPad as a second monitor with Sidecar if you have a MacBook. Even if it's something like content consumption, like scrolling Twitter or YouTube or browsing the internet. The point is, by doing this, the idea is to develop the habit of using your iPad for that specific use. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, then I would appreciate it if you gave it a like, and if you really enjoyed it, then maybe consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. If you want to see more of me, you can follow me on Instagram at MaroGhost. I'll leave that link down in the description. But that has been all. I have been MaroGhost, and I'll haunt you tomorrow. Bye.
Here we go.